Glorious purpose and TVA and yeah. And what the heck was that finale? Anyway, we're making SYLVIE'S sword. Hey guys, I'm Frank, welcome to my channel, and today I want to show you how to make Lady Loki or SYLVIE'S sword from the new Disney Plus show. Now, that's not really that new, the show is over, but regardless, this will be a pretty spoiler-free video. It's a sword, there's not too much spoilery about it. However, if you've seen the finale, the sword does play a pretty important role in that, which is kind of cool, and I'm really excited to see what comes next. Through this video, I'm going to take you guys through the files from DO3D, how I printed them, how I think you guys should print them, the prep, the priming, the painting, and the finish to get a nice metallic sheen. Now, this is a little bit of a different project for me. This is an entirely resin printed sword. It's not a plastic FDM 3D printed sword, and the entire blade was done in graphite rub, just like my Mandalorian helmet. So it came out pretty cool. It's pretty unique, and hopefully you guys through this will learn how you can make your own sword. Let's get started. I would like to point out one thing before we continue. In the process of filming this intro, I dropped the absolute crud out of this sword right on the tip, and I broke it off right there. Now I have refused it. This is resin printed, and this is gonna be a very, very easy fix, and I'll kind of talk about that later, how I'm gonna repair this and cover it all up like it never even happened. Now, before we start, just a quick overview of the blade, how it was printed, how many pieces, and on what printer. This way, I don't really have to cover it in, giant sections. All three parts were printed on an EPAX X156 resin printer in 3 different sections. It was primed with some standard Rust-Oleum primer and then finished with a gloss black spray paint. This way I was able to do the graphite rub on the silver parts of the handle and the blade, followed by a nice gold metallic spray paint from Rust-Oleum on the handle, and then I used more graphite rub to dirty the handle up and weather it just a little bit to give it a nice little effect. So when you get the files from DO3D, you'll be met with 2 different parts. You'll be met with the blade itself and then the handle down here. Now, depending on the printer you want to print this on, you're probably gonna have to cut this up. Even the blade by itself, I don't even think the CR10 S5 can do it standing up. And with how thin it is, I don't think I would do that anyway, because you're gonna get some serious bad layer lines near the top of the blade. So what I did is I cut the blade in half. Here now I have the blade sliced into 2 separate parts, and if you want a really nice in-depth tutorial on cutting up larger props and blades to fit on any printer and adding holes so you can reinforce them with some metal rods or dowels, I've linked a video down below and right here so you guys can learn how to do that after the video. But there's a little bit more to it, and this isn't the video to cover that in. Just know you're going to want to reinforce a blade that's this thin, and it's pretty easy to do. You shouldn't have any trouble with it. Now, like I said, this entire blade was printed on my X156 in one shot, and you can see here the blade by itself just is a little bit too tall to fit on the printer all by its lonesome. Maybe even if I adjust it and kind of move it around like this, it still just isn't quite tall enough, but it gets pretty close. And anyway, when you're resin printing, the taller the print, the worse you're off. And I don't mean quality-wise, I mean length-wise. If I go and try to print, just for funsies, if I go and try to print these 3 parts standing up like this, we're gonna have an absolutely immense slice time. Now, Chidubox, or this resin printing program, very similar to Cura, just for resin printers, is saying 70 hours to print this. That's insane for a resin printer. I don't wanna let it print that long. So if we go back, and I always talk about in my other videos, orientation is key. So let's rotate these all flat and slice them this time. 15 hours, literally a quarter of the time to print this. That's the benefit of resin printing when you can lay things down. It's gonna take the same amount of time whether or not you filled the entire build plate up. I could print 4 of these at the same time. As long as the height isn't taller than this blade right here, they're always gonna take the same amount of time. Now, I am working on some resin printing tutorials to better explain this to you guys, and obviously this is without any support generation and optimal orientation, but this is the orientation I printed them on this resin printer. Now, the X156 is a huge resin printer, one of the biggest on the market, so I can get away with doing the blade in just 2 parts. You might have to cut it into more sections, but again, as long as the height isn't taller than wherever this top blade part is, it's not going to take any longer, so feel free to cut it in as many pieces as you need to. If I wanted to fit this on something like my E10, I'd obviously have to go and cut it just a little bit more, but it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. Now, like I said, I wouldn't really recommend resin printing this. I kind of did it for funsies, and if you have access to it, that's great, but not everybody has a resin printer, which I totally get. So let's take a look in Cura to see how maybe you might want to orient these. Now, I've gone and dropped them on an Ender 3 build plate. As you can see, one part of the blade fits just fine standing up. The hilt just barely doesn't reach. Now, you might be able to do something crafty, like tilt the hilt back just a little bit to get it to fit, but then you're going to be looking at some serious support generation to hold that up, but that's really not that bad. An Ender should be able to handle that. You run something like tree supports, and you're going to be just fine. As for the other part of the blade, this one's going to be a little trickier. Now, you can cut this up and lay it down flat on its back, but you're going to lose quality and detail. You want to try to stand this blade up as best as possible. So again, you could try to tilt it back and maybe cut off just the top part of it up here and maybe cut it into 2 sections. I'd probably cut it right above this detail line right here, so you're not fusing it through multiple parts where these details run through. I cut it roughly around here where I was only going through 3 detail lines where this intersected, and I wasn't cutting off any of the runes. So cut this up and orient this however you really need to. I definitely do not recommend laying it down flat like this. I've seen people do something similar, kind of like that, and we'll move over to a bigger printer. I call this the infinity bed. Definitely don't lay the blade down like that. The quality is going to be absolutely horrendous. So yeah, please do avoid that. But this definitely can fit on an Ender 3, so I really wouldn't worry about that. Now, as for orientation and infill, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about real quick is orientation. Now, this is the front of the printer, and if it's a bed slinger like an Ender 3, it's going to be moving forward and back on this green line. That's going to cause this blade right here to wobble forward and back, forward and back. That's going to give you some pretty bad layer lines. Now, if we take this blade, stand it up like this, and rotate it forward, and then I would honestly probably do this. The base is bigger, and you're going to probably want to use something like a pretty large raft. Now, as the bed moves forward and back, what's going to happen is the blade is going to fight that. It's going to be moving forward and back, but it's not really going to wobble as much. And then you're going to have your x-axis just moving back left and right and printing it with really not too bad wobble or anything. So I would print it just like this, stand it up nice and tall, that'd be fine, lower your speed, and you'd probably be looking at something anywhere between a 10 to 15% infill for this blade. You don't really need to go crazy with these blades. It is a little bit thinner, maybe even a 20, but maybe 15 to 20 is the most I would do. And put it on whatever quality settings you want, but I definitely recommend a pretty beefy raft to help hold this thing up. Same thing with the handle, or you can cut it in half and print it however you want. So get these printed, get them on your workbench. Hopefully the quality comes out good, but they're very simple files, and yeah, you'll be ready to build the sword. So with the files sorted out, hopefully you guys have a little bit better idea how to actually orient and print this thing. I have tons of videos to show you guys how to 3D print a little bit better, some tutorials and settings like that. I'll link a few of those down below that I think will be beneficial to you guys. But unfortunately, I don't have a temp pad like the TVA, so we're going to use a little bit of movie magic to go back in time to when this was a fresh print, and then we'll show you guys how I fused it together, sanded it, did all the fun stuff. Let's take a look. So now to fuse both of these together, I've taken a little metal rod, cut it to length, and it fits perfectly in that little alignment hole. And now we're going to try to fuse this together with some resin. I hear it's a pretty easy thing to do. Okay, so that worked a treat. It's a little hard to see, but here's the union. Now it looked like this originally. I held them together, used some tape to make a pool, and then I put the resin in there and then cured it. And it cures it into one piece. Now it's a little high. Now I could have been as careful as I wanted to. I wasn't really. So then I took a scribing tool and I re-etched in the details. And I wish, yeah, you guys can kind of see it. You can still see where the seam is. I'll have to attack that once I get a little bit closer to painting it. But not bad, and it's nice. It's one nice piece. It's a little flimsy, but again, it's just a prop for decoration. I've already dropped it and it survived, so we're doing pretty good. Not bad, it's pretty cool. And here's the finished sword, well, finished printing, all on a resin printer, and it has a good weight to it. It feels nice. The handle was hollow. I did the same thing. I had drain holes here, and I just dabbed a little bit of resin on them, cured them, and then I started sanding them down. So let's keep going. All right, the blades starting to look a little bit presentable. I had to go back and re-etch some of the runes because I got rid of them. I guess the resin had dripped a little bit there, so I had to re-etch this upside down 4, or this H, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Had to re-etch that, and then I had to re-etch that symbol right there and just kind of match them. So yeah, it's almost ready for primer, and then I can start really working out some of the imperfections and then attacking the handle. But as of now, it is removable. A little bit of blood right there, don't mind that. Yeah, I like it. This is pretty cool. All right, so I attacked it with some 60, 40, 80 grit sandpaper. And I got rid of most of the lines. There's still some by the runes. I don't want to sand down too much, but up here looks great.
compared to this side where you can still see all the stepping. I can feel it. The primer should take care of some of that. I bought this at Lowe's. It's like a detail sander with little Velcro sand strips. This is pretty cool. Only has 400 grit, but yeah, not bad. Or maybe I got an AutoZone. I don't know. It helped. All right, we're all sanded. I got rid of as many of the lines as I could. It's looking pretty good. So I have the blade here done with a nice gloss black, and I've started to graphite rub it. So what you do with graphite rub is you take it, a little cotton swab, and just spread it around on the gloss black. Now there's a bunch of information about the best times to apply it, and do you do it when the gloss black is tacky? Do you clear coat the gloss black? And honestly, that's going to be up to you to test, because each gloss black reacts different. This is a Creality gloss black, and it seems to work best when it's slightly tacky. So that's what I'm doing. And it still looks a little dull like this. This is just a quick little application, but as you buff and polish it, it'll start to get a lot more reflective. So that's what we're going to go and do.
So before we wrap this video up, two things I want to talk about. First, how I'm going to fix the tip of this sword. Now you saw in the video, I took the resin, poured it into the fusion crack right there, and kind of sanded everything down. That's exactly how I'm going to fix this tip. I'm going to cover it up with some tape, pour some resin in, sand it down, gloss black, graphite rub. What's cool about graphite rub is that I'm not going to need to redo the entire blade. I can blend it in just to the end area, and it'll kind of just disappear into the entire thing. And second, everybody seems to want graphite rub to stay sealed and stay clean and stay nice and fresh. But the thing about metal is it gets fingerprints, it gets dirty, and it's not perfect. This is a 100% real sword, and as you can see, it's kind of tarnished and a little messed up. So expecting something like graphite rub to not retain fingerprints and get a little messy is kind of silly. It looks like real metal when it starts to get a little dirty. I think it lends to the overall effect of it being a sword, and if you watch the show, it's not in the best condition either. Another popular concern is graphite rub coming off in your hands when you touch it and when you're holding the blade. But as long as you wipe everything off when you're done, you don't need to seal it. I can hold the handle, I can grab the blade, and it doesn't come off. And last but not least, guys, please don't forget to subscribe. I upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with an occasional bonus video on Sundays. That does it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and you have a good day. Now I guess I need to go kiss myself.